Let's have some fun. Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Commish Orr, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the setup for my new Baseball Maelstrom POPs League. I guess the first thing to talk about would be, who am I? Well, as I said, my name is Commish Orr, and I'm a long-time tabletop baseball game player since I was, before even my teens, I believe. My parents played, and some of their friends played Stratomatic. And so I've been playing for quite a long time myself. Between about 2003 and 2013, I, along with my co commissioner, Commish Dugan, ran an online baseball league using the Out of the Park baseball engine. We had, dozens of owners in that league, and it was a lot of fun to run, and I think everybody had a great time playing it while we were running it. I hadn't played for quite a while. My co-commissioner, Commish Dugan, has been playing here and there, and was always filling me in on his league that he's been doing solo. Just recently, I kind of got the itch to try something myself. And so I kind of was delving back into the world of tabletop baseball games to see what else was out there. And I came across a couple of interesting ones, one of which was made by one of the people that had been in our league back then, in our Baseball Maelstrom League. And that game is Payoff Pitch Baseball. When I took a look at it, seemed really interesting. I liked that the game starts on the pitcher's card and that the pitcher really drives the action. I also know that I wanted a game that had lefty-righty splits, which it does, and rare plays, ballpark effects, that kind of thing. And so I thought I would start a solo league of some kind using Payoff Pitch. Well, the Baseball Maelstrom League that we started back over 10 years ago was really started with an interesting concept where we had real life players playing with Hall of Famers or top players from different teams. And so that idea has always been something that has interested me. In fact, Commish Dugan's solo league that he's running through right now is a randomized draft of a Hall of Fame Stratomatic set. And so I kind of wanted to do something similar with the league that I was creating and setting up. So the first thing I did was check to see if Payoff Pitch had a Hall of Fame set of any kind, and they don't have one for sale currently. I've found that they did have a Kickstarter several years ago in which they did have a Hall of Fame set, but that set is hard to come by, and they don't really have any Hall of Fame set currently for sale. So I took a look at what they did have to offer, and what I found was they have, a number of baseball seasons available, but not every baseball season. Not every baseball season. And as I said, I knew I wanted to do lefty-righty splits. Fortunately, most of the seasons they do have lefty-righty splits. So my next thought was to take a look at Hall of Famers and see if there were enough seasons that Payoff Pitch had to create some teams of Hall of Famers. So what I did was I went to Baseball Reference and exported the list of Hall of Famers into an Excel file. And using that Excel file kind of as a springboard, I started going player by player to see what good seasons of these Hall of Famers Payoff Pitch had available. One of the limitations with Payoff Pitch is there aren't really a lot of the earlier seasons. So really, prior to the 1930s, there's really only one season, 1921, that has lefty-righty splits. And so right away, there were some Hall of Famers that just weren't going to be included in the league. So players like Christy Mathewson, somebody like that just wasn't going to have a card even available for me to use in the set. Which that was fine. I kind of enjoyed the limitation because that way it kind of helped me narrow my focus a little bit on the players that were going to be available. The second problem was that I didn't have, since there was no Hall of Fame set, I was looking at a lot of seasons of cards, and to purchase all of those seasons was going to be very expensive. Very expensive. However, Payoff Pitch does have something interesting. They have PDF sets of cards. And so the PDF sets are actually pretty reasonably priced. And so I knew that the number of seasons I was looking at, it wouldn't be too outrageous to get all of the PDF seasons that I needed to really encapsulate all of the Hall of Famers for the teams. Very early in the process, I came to the conclusion that it would really be cool to have American League teams and National League teams of Hall of Famers, and each league would play independently and then have some kind of World Series at the end where the top American League team and the top National League team would play each other. Taking a look at the sets that were available and the players that were available, it soon became clear that the main limitation was going to be with the pitchers. There are a limited number of pitchers available, not to mention the number of Hall of Famers total to begin with. And what I found there were about, it was oddly even in the sense of American League and National League Hall of Famers. And when I'm talking about American League Hall of Famers, I'm talking about the player's payoff pitch season that I was going to use was when he was playing on an American League team or a National League team. That's how I separated the American and National League teams. And I did only want to take one, have the player only be represented by one of his seasons. So there would only be one Babe Ruth and one Ted Williams and so on, even though there may be multiple seasons where they were carded. I only wanted to use one of the seasons to only have one of those players in the set. So when I created my spreadsheet and started parsing the players, I realized that there were I could get about 3 full teams of American League Hall of Famers and 3 full teams of National League Hall of Famers. And when I say full teams, I'm talking there were enough players to have 2 players at each position that basically started a majority of the season at those positions. And so then I quickly realized that, an uneven number of teams wasn't going to be very interesting. So I got the idea of, what if I created a 4th team in each league of players who were not in the Hall of Fame? Players like Pete Rose or players like Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and a number of others who weren't Hall of Fame players for whatever reason. But I also knew that I wanted them to also be retired players. I didn't want to use any current players that were still in the league. And so I started to look through to see if I could get a team, an American League and a National League team of players that were still stars. They weren't in the Hall of Fame. And sure enough, I was able to complete a team of American and National League players. So all the American League teams have 2 players rated at each position that played a majority of their season at that position. All of the National League teams, same thing. And each of the teams also had 9 pitchers. I would have preferred 10, but there just weren't enough players in the Hall of Fame to make that work. So with those limitations, I'd have 16 position players and 9 pitchers for each team to get a full team of 25. and there were enough to make that work. And so that's what I did. I continued to fill out my spreadsheet, get the players sorted. I wanted a fair way to assign players to teams, since there were going to be 4 American League and 4 National League teams. I didn't want to just randomly choose where the players went and have a chance of one team being grossly better than the other teams or grossly worse than the other teams. I wanted to be fairly even. Obviously, you're never going to get things perfectly balanced in this kind of thing, but I wanted to be fairly even. So what I did was I thought, well, the easiest way to do it is to, and this also helped me choose which season to pick for the Hall of Fame players and the non-Hall of Fame players, because it had to be a season that they were carded in Payoff Pitch. It also had to be a season that they had what I call a good season. So if they had a horrible year, I kind of threw them out and didn't use them. If the only seasons available in Payoff Pitch were bad years for them, I didn't include them in the league. And so what I did was I thought, well, wins against replacement is kind of the standard metric to determine how good a player is or how good a player's season is. And so that's what I used to enter in the spreadsheet. So I used wins against replacement. I started filling in every player. I looked them up in Baseball Reference, and I found the season that they were carded in Payoff Pitch and entered those wins against replacement, making sure to find the best season that was available in Payoff Pitch, the best carded season that they were available in Payoff Pitch, and started filling out my spreadsheet with all of the players. I then went back and using JAWS. If you go to Baseball Reference and type in JAWS, you can actually find the page where Baseball Reference shows you the top players at each position according to JAWS. JAWS is just what it does, though, is it takes their career wins against replacement and averages it with their 7-year peak. So that gives you sometimes a little bit better representation of who the better players are. So that's what I used. And as I said, I gradually filled that in for each of the players. And then when I was done entering all of this in a spreadsheet, I did a serpentine draft by position and just sorted by wins against replacement and drafted position by position to get 2 players per position, 9 pitchers, 5 of which would be the starters and 4 would be the relievers, because I wasn't really sure if I wanted to go 5-man rotation or 4-man. So at that point, I was kind of set with the players that were going to be in the league. I did also want to make sure that there was representation with the Negro League players. Payoff Pitch, I didn't realize at first, had Negro League players in them carded, but the 1921 Payoff Pitch season actually includes a Negro League team as well. And so in order to keep the representation with the Negro Leaguers, I decided that I wanted 1 player per team to be from the Negro League Payoff Pitch card set. And by card set, there's 1 team, I believe. That was pretty limiting because the number of players is limited, and I wanted 3 American League and 3 National League, which again wasn't perfect. I wasn't really able to split those up, American and National League, because there were the Negro Leagues didn't have an American and National League team in 1921 when during the card set in question. So in those cases, I found 3 or 6 total Negro Leaguers that were in the Hall of Fame. I asked 3 of them for each league, and then I chose 2 additional Negro League players that aren't in the Hall of Fame to join the non-Hall of Fame teams, one in the American and one in the National League. After all of that, I had 8 teams, 4 American League and 4 National League teams. And at that point, I wanted to create names, interesting names for my teams, and cities that they could play in. And I had a couple of different options there that I could do. I thought, well, I want to kind of name the teams based on maybe one of the top players on each team. So the team that has Babe Ruth, maybe I would name them the Babes or something like that. Or I kind of had that idea at first. The Ryan Express, when Commish Dugan and I had our Stratomatic Hall of Fame game that we played together. One of my teams was the Ryan Express after Nolan Ryan. So that was one of my ideas. And then I thought, I almost want to make them a little bit more realistic in terms of a team name. And so what I did was I went to each of the teams, and I did look for a top player on the team that would serve as maybe the team captain or whatever you want to call it. I looked at the player's nickname to come up with a team name. And then in terms of the city, I picked the city that player, in most cases, that player played for. Certain cities that became obvious when I took a look at the players in question. And so that's how I came up with the team names and the cities. And so the team names are the Boston Splinters after Ted Williams, Splendid Splinter. The New York Swats for Babe Ruth, the Sultan of Swat. The Oakland Jacks, Reggie Jackson is on that team. And the non-Hall of Fame team is the Detroit Rockets. Roger Clemens is the ace pitcher on the pitching staff for the Detroit Rockets. And again, he didn't play for Detroit, but Detroit was a city that I wanted to be in the league. On the National League side, I have the Los Angeles Dynamos. Just by chance, that team has both Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale. So the dynamic duo, I thought the Dynamos would be a good team name for them. The Houston Hoots with Bob Gibson. And then the St. Louis Wizards with Ozzie Smith. Ozzie Smith isn't necessarily the top player on the team, but it just was too good to pass up. And then Dwight Gooden was on the non-Hall of Fame National League team. And so that team is named the Chicago Docs. And then after choosing the team names, I chose a stadium to represent that city. And it had to be the year for the stadium had to be the year of a player on the team. So again, I went, the Boston team is playing at Fenway Park in a Ted Williams year. New York Swats are playing at the Polo Grounds because of the Babe Ruth year that I'm using. They played at the Polo Grounds, and so on. Then then I got crazy. I was like, it's not enough to just name the teams, but I want to come up with a team logo for each team also. So using a Maelstrom style logo as this foundation, which back in the Maelstrom we had circular logos with the team logo in the middle. That's kind of what I started to base it on, and I really like that design. It's a very clean design, and I created logos for all of the teams, all 8 teams. And then finally, I also was like, well, maybe I can come up with historical managers to represent each team. And so that's what I did. I came up with a manager for each team. The managers I picked are managers that managed the city name, if that makes sense. So Boston was a manager, Joe Cronin, who managed the Red Sox back in the day, and New York, and so on. I picked historical managers that they had to have managed that team at some point in their history. And again, the 3 Hall of Fame teams have a Hall of Fame manager. The non-Hall of Fame teams have non-Hall of Fame managers that were still great managers. And that's what I did around them. Of course, the managers have no effect on anything other than it's just interesting for thinking of the concept in my head. Finally, after getting the managers, I knew that I wanted to come up with a schedule. And at first I thought about doing a whole 162 game schedule, but realistically 162 games with 8 teams is a lot of games to deal with. And I knew that something that daunting would take me a long time to finish. I wanted something a little bit more bite-sized. So I decided on a 1/3 season schedule. So that's what we're doing, 54 games, which would be 27 before an All-Star break, 27 after an All-Star break, because I plan to do an All-Star game as well. And so I found some templates out there for schedules as a kind of a starting basis, and then I tweaked them to make them more balanced, I guess, so that every team is playing the other team an equal number of times in a 54 game schedule. With 4 teams, each team is playing every other team 18 times. So 9 away and 9 home. And so that's what I started as the basis. You can kind of see the schedule there to create my schedule. With all of that done, I knew that I wanted to keep some stats, some accurate stats. And I know that some people use iScore. Back when we played Stratomatic, I used an amazing software called Ballstat and Ballscore. And so I kind of looked that up again and found out that it was completely free now. So I downloaded that right away. Sadly, the creator of that program has passed away, so it's not being updated currently. But there is a pretty robust community of people who use it. So, and I had some familiarity with it from before, so I knew that that's what I wanted to use to keep track of everything. If you have questions, feel free to drop those in the comments. I am happy to answer those questions for you. So many people do basically broadcasts of them playing their games. That's the common thing. And I didn't necessarily want to do that because other people do that much better than I could probably do it. Instead of doing that, I plan to do video recaps of the games using historical pictures or videos, probably mostly pictures, but maybe I'll throw some videos in there. So using historical footage or pictures to talk about the recap, kind of like a recap you would see on SportsCenter or something like that, to talk about the games. So rather than watching me half an hour, 45-minute play through a game, instead you'll get a nice short recap of the action so that you can kind of follow along if this is something you're interested in. I plan on having a website up that has the stats that you can see as each day's games are played. I'll update that so that you can have access to see how players are doing if it's something that interests you. All right, I've talked a lot, much longer than I expected to. But if you have any questions, drop those down in the comments. Hopefully you're interested in this kind of concept. I know different concepts always are interesting to me. I know Payoff Pitch isn't designed to be played the way I'm playing it with cherry-picked players. It's not really designed for that, but it's something I'm curious to check out. I do have some other concepts for leagues that I plan on doing as well. Some may use Payoff Pitch, some may not use Payoff Pitch. I may use other tabletop games to do some of these concepts as well. But I figure if I can do a day's games every week, then 54, that it takes us a little over a year to get through an entire season, or the entire season that I'm going to do. So if this is something that interests you, please consider clicking the subscribe button. If you haven't already checked the league promo trailer, Go check that out. That's the only other video as of the time of me making this video. The next videos I make will be a team video that shows the roster and lineups for each team. And I think that's where I'll leave things. Thank you so much for watching this, if you watched till the end. If you know other people that you think might be interested in this, consider sharing this with them. Give me a like down below if you're interested in giving me a like. And until next time, have a great evening.